The cold silence of space stretched out, the black void broken only by the scattered stars glimmering like distant memories. A small, unassuming ship drifted through the cosmic sea, its sleek silver hull gleaming in the soft light of a nearby sun. Inside, the human pilot, Lieutenant James Carter, stared intently at the glowing console before him. For years, the Federation had known about the Vrenari, race of fiercely intelligent and mysterious aliens that lived on the distant planet Zarthal. Despite years of contact, they had always been elusive, leaving little to no trace of themselves in the galaxy. But there was one thing that set them apart from other alien species. The Vrenari females were a complete enigma. Humans had heard rumors, stories whispered by those who had crossed paths with them, and the few brave souls who had managed to survive their fleeting encounters. The Vrenari females were beautiful, but they were also terrifying. No one had dared to get close. Not even the bravest of soldiers, scientists, or diplomats. The Vrenari female was a being who inspired awe and dread in equal measure. And yet, Carter was about to do something no one had ever dared to do before approach them. The reason for his mission was simple: an invitation. A mysterious transmission had come through the Federation's relay station. It was brief but undeniably clear. The Vrenari wished to meet the human. There were no details, no explanations. Just the promise of a meeting. Carter's mind raced as he maneuvered his ship toward Zarthal, his heart beating faster with each passing moment. This was a moment in history, one that would shape the future of humanity's relationship with the Vrenari. What could they want with him? Why him of all people? The ship passed through the atmosphere of Zarthal, the swirling green clouds below, beginning to reveal the surface. Carter's fingers hovered over the controls, the anticipation almost unbearable. As the ship touched down on a soft patch of grass near a cliffside, the doors slowly opened. A gust of wind swept through, the air carrying the scent of strange alien flora. He stepped out cautiously, his boots crunching on the dry earth. He wasn't sure what he was expecting, perhaps an imposing city of alien architecture, or the imposing figure of a Vrenari warrior standing watch. Instead, the landscape seemed strangely peaceful, almost serene. The silence was broken only by the sound of the wind rustling through the trees, but something felt off. The hairs on the back of his neck stood up, and the feeling of being watched was inescapable. He had heard the stories, of course, that the Vrenari females could see through you, read your thoughts and emotions in the blink of an eye. That their presence could cause a man's heart to stop in fear, or captivate them with a simple glance. Yet, despite all the warnings, Carter had never been one to back down from a challenge. Suddenly, a movement in the distance caught his eye. A figure, tall and impossibly graceful, appeared from behind a cluster of trees. At first glance, it seemed like a mirage, too perfect to be real. But as it drew closer, Carter could see her clearly, a Vrenari female. Her appearance was unlike anything he had ever imagined. She was tall, her skin a smooth, silvery blue, almost translucent under the dim sunlight. Her eyes, large and luminous, seemed to glow faintly in the shadow of the trees. She wore no clothes, but her body was adorned with intricate patterns of shimmering, bioluminescent markings that seemed to shift with every movement. Carter stood frozen, caught in her gaze. His breath caught in his throat as he felt a strange pressure in his chest. The stories had been true, her mere presence was overwhelming. But unlike the others, Carter didn't feel the urge to flee. He couldn't explain why, but he felt a strange pull toward her, a desire to understand what she was, and what she wanted from him. The female stopped just a few paces away, her gaze studying him with a curious intensity. Her voice, when it came, was soft but carried an undeniable authority. "You are the human they sent," she said, her words lilting with an alien cadence. "I expected ... more." Carter blinked, unsure of how to respond. I don't understand. What do you want from me?" She stepped closer, and for a moment, Carter thought he might collapse from the pressure in the air. But instead, she reached out, her slender fingers brushing lightly against his arm. The sensation was like a surge of electricity, something he couldn't quite place. But then she withdrew, a faint smile playing at the corners of her lips. "I do not want anything from you, human," she said. "It is you who will decide if we are enemies or allies." The words hung heavy in the air. Carter's heart raced as he tried to process what she had said. He had come here with no idea what to expect, but now he realized that nothing in his life had prepared him for this moment. The stakes were higher than he could have imagined. And yet, deep within, a seed of doubt began to form. Could the Vrenari really be trusted? What did they want with humanity, and why was he chosen to be the one to meet them? The questions began to pile up, each one more urgent than the last. Asterisk. The Vrenari female didn't wait for him to speak. Her gaze shifted to the vast landscape around them, as if considering something in the distance. Carter, still frozen in place, struggled to gather his thoughts. He had trained for years, studied countless alien species, prepared himself for the diplomatic missions he had been assigned, but nothing had prepared him for this. Her eyes turned back to him, and it felt as though she was peering straight through him. The intensity of her stare was like a weight pressing against his chest. "The Federation does not understand," she murmured, almost to herself. "They do not know why we act the way we do. But you, human, you will learn." She paused, as if to let the words sink in. "You will learn why no one dared to come close." Carter opened his mouth to speak, but the words wouldn't come. This wasn't what he expected. She didn't seem hostile. There was no sign of aggression, no weapons, no sign of a trap. But the unease in the pit of his stomach only grew. There was something deeper here, something that could change everything. I don't understand," Carter finally managed, his voice cracking slightly. "Why me? Why now?" The Vrenari female tilted her head, her expression unreadable. Then she spoke again, her voice softer, almost as if she were trying to reassure him, though the weight of her words was no less daunting. "You are the first human to come, and you are the first who will learn the truth." She stepped even closer now, her eyes locking onto his. "The truth about why no one dares to approach us. Especially not our females." Carter's heartbeat quickened. He could hear the faintest tremor in her voice, as if she herself had been carrying a burden for a long time. The silence that followed felt suffocating. The wind rustled through the alien trees, but everything else seemed frozen in time. "What truth?" Carter asked, his voice barely above a whisper. Her eyes narrowed, almost with a sense of pity. "Humans have only scratched the surface. They have no idea what the Vrenari truly are. You think we are just another alien race, but we are much older, much more complex." She took another step forward, her presence overwhelming in a way that made Carter feel small. "Our females," she continued, "are the key, but not in the way you think." There was a strange pause before she spoke again, her voice taking on a more serious, almost solemn tone. "We are not like other species. We do not reproduce the way you do. Our females do not carry the burden of birth. They hold something far more powerful." Carter blinked, trying to process what she was saying. His mind raced with confusion. "What do you mean?" he asked, his thoughts spinning. He had heard that the Vrenari were an advanced race, but this was something beyond anything he had been prepared for. "You will see soon enough," she said, and before Carter could respond, a low hum filled the air, vibrating through the ground beneath his boots. The Vrenari female stepped back, turning her head toward the source of the sound. Carter followed her gaze, his heart pounding in his chest. From the edge of the forest, a group of figures emerged, and the sight of them made his breath catch in his throat. They were like nothing he had seen before. Their bodies were tall and graceful, their features more pronounced than the females. Their eyes shimmering with an otherworldly intelligence. But there was something deeply unsettling about them. These were not the same as the peaceful Vrenari female who had greeted him. These were warriors strong, armed, and emanating an aura of palpable danger. They moved as one, their movements fluid and precise, like a single living organism. They surrounded him, blocking his way with swift, decisive movements, leaving no escape. Carter felt his throat tighten as the tension in the air became suffocating. But the female did not flinch. She stepped forward, her gaze unyielding. "The Guardians have come," she said simply. "They will test you." Carter's pulse quickened, but he stayed still. The Guardians. He had heard rumors of them, the mysterious protectors of the Vrenari species, said to be their most powerful warriors. Yet here they were, surrounding him, giving him no chance to escape. He opened his mouth to protest, to demand answers, but the female raised a hand. "There is no choice," she said. "You must face them. Only then will you be worthy of knowing the truth." Before he could protest, one of the Guardians stepped forward. His face was hard, emotionless, his body covered in shimmering silver armor that seemed to blend seamlessly with the environment. His eyes were cold, calculating. The Guardian extended a hand, and the air around them seemed to grow colder, sharper. "You will face us now," the Guardian said, his voice like the crack of ice. "Prove you are worthy." Carter stood frozen, his mind racing. What was he supposed to do? What could he do? He was only one human, outnumbered and facing the most advanced alien warriors in the galaxy. His survival instincts kicked in, and he found himself looking for any possible escape route, but the Guardians were already closing in. A low hum filled the air once more. The tension was unbearable. What did the Vrenari want from him? Why was he chosen? He had no answers, only the certainty that this was far more dangerous than anything he had ever faced before. As the Guardians moved closer, Carter's pulse quickened. He had to make a choice, and fast. The test had begun, but what would he need to prove? And more importantly, what lay on the other side of this trial? But one thing was certain, the Vrenari were not as simple as they appeared. They had secrets, and the truth. The truth would change everything. Carter's heart pounded in his chest, the silence around him becoming almost unbearable. The Guardians closed in, their presence like a wall, their eyes cold and unblinking. There was no way out, no escape. The Vrenari female who had brought him here stood at a distance, watching with a calm, almost detached expression. She didn't move. She didn't say anything more. It was as if she were waiting for something to unfold, something only Carter could begin to understand. The Guardian who had stepped forward raised his hand, a strange glowing energy pulsing around his fingers. The air grew colder, the atmosphere heavier. Carter could feel the pressure building, a weight pressing down on him from all sides. He had been trained for combat, but nothing in his military experience had prepared him for these weren't ordinary soldiers. These weren't just alien warriors, they were something else entirely. Something ancient. Something powerful. Carter knew that if he didn't act quickly, he would be overpowered. He had no idea what kind of trial this was, but he understood one thing. It wasn't just a test of strength. The Vrenari had no interest in killing him, yet. They were testing something far deeper. His mind raced. He couldn't take them all on in a fight, not with the weapons he had. His eyes flicked to his sidearm, barely a match for the Guardian's advanced technology. He couldn't just charge at them. There had to be another way. There had to be a different way to prove himself. The Guardian's eyes narrowed, and the pressure in the air grew even more intense. The Vrenari female standing in the distance finally spoke, her voice carrying over the hum of the Guardian's presence. "You are not here to fight. Human," she said, her tone measured. This is not a trial of strength. You will face a different challenge, one that requires something deeper." Carter blinked, confused. He wasn't sure if she meant to help him or just provoke him further. Her words made little sense, and the more he tried to think, the more he felt himself slipping into a state of uncertainty. "What do you mean?" he demanded, his voice shaking with the weight of the moment. "What kind of challenge? What are you testing me for?" The Vrenari female stepped forward slightly, the guardians watching her every move. She seemed unfazed by their silent, looming presence. There was something unnervingly calm about her, as though the tension, the danger, the uncertainty that hung in the air didn't affect her at all. "The challenge is not physical, Lieutenant Carter," she said, her gaze now fixed on him with an intensity that made him feel as though she could see straight into his soul. "It is mental and emotional." Carter's confusion deepened. What did that even mean? He wasn't here to play games. He was here to negotiate, to make contact, to understand what the Vrenari wanted from humanity. But now, standing in front of the Guardians, surrounded by their overwhelming presence, he began to realize that the Vrenari didn't think like humans. They didn't operate on the same logic, the same priorities. "The Vrenari do not seek allies easily," the female continued, her voice now almost a whisper, though it carried in the heavy air. "Our females are the core of our strength. They are not to be taken lightly, not to be approached with simple intent. They are," she hesitated, as though searching for the right word, "complex." Carter frowned, trying to make sense of her cryptic words. "What do you mean? Are you saying that the females of your species are different?" Her expression softened slightly, but only for a moment, before she fixed him with her piercing eyes again. "We are more than just a species, Lieutenant. We are a symbiosis, a shared consciousness. The strength of the Vrenari lies not just in our warriors, but in the unity between us all. But this unity comes with great cost." The Guardians, who had remained motionless up until now, began to move in sync, their arms raised in a slow, deliberate motion. They were preparing something, their energy fields pulsing faintly. But Carter didn't understand what it meant yet. "This trial will show us if you are worthy to understand the true nature of the Vrenari," she continued, her gaze unrelenting. "We do not seek the strong, we do not seek the bold. We seek the wise." "Wise?" Carter repeated, bewildered. He could feel the pressure of their gaze now more than ever. "How am I supposed to prove that?" The Vrenari female took another step closer, her eyes never leaving his. "By understanding us not through your weapons or strength, but through your mind and your heart. You must navigate the balance between what you want and what you fear. The Guardians will test you, but they will not harm you unless you fail to grasp the true lesson." Carter's heart was hammering, but now, for the first time, he felt a shift within him. The gravity of the moment settled in his mind. The Vrenari had something far more complex in mind than he had ever imagined. This wasn't a simple mission. This wasn't about just shaking hands with a new alien species. This was about learning, understanding, adapting to a completely different form of existence. And in that moment, he realized that he had no choice but to play their game. He couldn't run. He couldn't fight. He had to learn to think like them, to see things as they did. The Guardian closest to him raised his hand, and a sharp pulse of energy crackled through the air. Carter took a step back, his body tense with anticipation. This was it. The trial was beginning. He wasn't sure if he was ready, but one thing was clear. This wasn't just about surviving. This was about uncovering the truth of the Vrenari, something far deeper and more powerful than he had ever imagined. Something that could change everything. And he was about to face it head on. The pulse of energy from the Guardian reverberated through the air, causing the ground beneath Carter's feet to tremble. The sensation was unlike anything he had experienced before. It wasn't an attack, it wasn't even a weapon in the traditional sense. It felt like a pressure, a force that pressed against his chest and mind. His thoughts scrambled, a sense of disorientation creeping in. The guardians surrounded him, moving with eerie synchrony, their eyes trained on him, as if waiting for him to do something, to react in a specific way. Carter stood frozen, his mind racing. What was the point of this trial? He couldn't help but wonder how he was supposed to prove his worth. He wasn't like the others, the diplomats, the experts in interspecies relations. He was just a soldier, trained in combat and survival, not in the complexities of alien thought. And yet, here he was, in the middle of a test that seemed to defy all logic. As the energy from the Guardian slowly dissipated, the air cleared, but the pressure remained. The Guardians were still close, their silent presence almost suffocating. The Vrenari female, watching from a distance, said nothing. She didn't offer him any guidance, didn't provide any clues. It was as if she wanted him to figure it out for himself. Then one of the Guardians moved forward, his eyes unwavering as he came to stand directly in front of Carter. Without speaking, he extended his hand, palm up. The gesture was simple, yet it carried a weight that Carter couldn't fully comprehend. The Guardian wasn't threatening him with weapons. No, the power emanating from him was something far more subtle, something that penetrated deeper than just physical force. Carter stared at the hand, his mind churning. This was a test of some kind. He was supposed to respond, but how? What was the right answer? Then it hit him. In all his training, in all the battles he had fought, there had always been one thing he had relied on above all else: his instincts. But this situation, this test was different. The Vrenari weren't asking him to fight, to defend himself, to prove he could win. They were asking him to understand. He took a deep breath, his body still tense, but now he had a clearer sense of what he needed to do. Carter slowly lifted his own hand, mirroring the Guardian's gesture, and placed his palm up toward him. The moment their hands were aligned, the energy in the air shifted again. It wasn't the same pressure as before, it was more subtle, more intimate. Carter could feel the pulse of the Guardian's presence flowing into him, as if the alien's thoughts were merging with his own. A flood of images, emotions, and sensations rushed through his mind, overwhelming him with their intensity. He saw the history of the Vrenari, a race far older than humanity could ever comprehend. He saw their rise to power, their exploration of the stars, and their struggles to survive in a universe that seemed determined to destroy them. He saw the complex unity between the Vrenari, the shared consciousness that linked them all together. And at the heart of it all, he saw the females, no, not just females, but the embodiment of something far greater. The Vrenari females were not just bearers of life. They were conduits of the collective consciousness. They were the guardians of the balance that kept their entire species in harmony. The unity between the males and females of their race was not biological, it was something deeper, something spiritual, a connection that transcended mere reproduction. But this connection came with a price. The weight of that realization hit Carter hard. The Vrenari had told him that their females were powerful, but he hadn't truly understood until now. The strength of the Vrenari came from their shared consciousness, a delicate web that could be torn apart if disturbed. And the Vrenari female, the one who had brought him here, was not just a messenger. She was a key to maintaining that balance. Carter's mind reeled as the images continued to flood his consciousness, showing the Vrenari's most painful memories, the battles they had fought not against other species, but against their own internal struggles, the trials they had undergone to preserve their unity. And now, Carter was at the heart of it. He wasn't just a witness to this truth. He was being tested to see if he could grasp the delicate balance of their existence. The Guardian's hand slowly withdrew, and the images faded as quickly as they had come. Carter staggered back, his breath ragged as he tried to ground himself in the present. His body felt weak from the intensity of the experience. The Guardians were still watching, their eyes unreadable. But the Vrenari female stepped forward, her Gaze softer now, though still intense. You felt it, didn't you? She asked, her voice almost gentle. The unity. The connection. Carter swallowed hard, still processing the flood of information. I felt it. It was overwhelming. She nodded slowly, her expression unchanged. It is. The Vrenari are not just a species. We are a collective, bound by our consciousness. Our females are the heart of that unity. Without them, the balance would shatter. We are the embodiment of that connection, and it is through that connection that we survive. Carter's mind was still racing, trying to make sense of it all. He had never encountered anything like this. The way the Vrenari existed, it wasn't just about biology. It was a mental and emotional bond, an interwoven web of consciousness that could not be broken without disastrous consequences. What happens if that balance is disrupted? He asked, his voice barely above a whisper. The Vrenari female's eyes flickered with something akin to sorrow. It is a question we have asked ourselves for centuries. Our enemies understand the power of our unity. They have tried to destroy. It tried to tear us apart, but we have survived for now. Carter's mind snapped to attention. So the test, it's not just about understanding the Vrenari. It's about understanding the consequences of disrupting that unity. She nodded, her expression serious. You are correct. Humanity is on the verge of making the choice. Whether or not we will be allies, whether we will work together to prevent the disruption of the balance. But we must know if you are capable of understanding what that truly means. Carter felt the weight of her words settle on him. This wasn't just about forging an alliance. This was about the survival of an entire species, and possibly the fate of humanity's future as well. The Guardians stepped back, their eyes still fixed on him. The Vrenari female looked toward the horizon, her gaze distant. We will watch, she said, her voice low. And we will see if you can prove that you are worthy. If you understand the cost of unity. Carter stood there, feeling the gravity of what had just transpired. He had come here to meet a species, to establish a relationship. But now, he realized that this was something much larger. It wasn't just a meeting between two species, it was a test of survival, of understanding a deeper connection than he had ever known. And he was only beginning to grasp the true meaning of the Vrenari's existence. Carter stood still, the weight of the Vrenari female's words hanging in the air like a thick fog. The Guardians, having stepped back, now circled him like silent sentinels, their eyes unwavering. He could feel their scrutiny, no longer hostile, but expectant. The air seemed thicker than before, pressing down on him with a palpable force. The Vrenari female's gaze was unyielding, though there was something softer in it now, almost as if she were waiting for him to process the monumental truth he had just learned. He swallowed hard, still struggling to understand the magnitude of the situation. The Vrenari weren't just a powerful species. They were a delicate ecosystem of shared consciousness, their survival bound to an unbreakable connection between males and females. And Carter, standing there alone in the middle of their world, had somehow become part of this fragile web. This wasn't just a diplomatic mission anymore. He wasn't here to negotiate or sign agreements. He was here to make a choice, one that could determine not only the fate of humanity, but also the fate of the Vrenari. The female stepped forward again, her presence as overwhelming as it had been when they first met. Her luminous eyes locked onto his, and for a moment, Carter felt as though she could see straight through him, as though she could read every fear, every doubt he had. Do you understand now? She asked, her voice soft but firm. This unity we share is fragile. It is not simply a matter of power or influence. It is a bond that transcends biology, transcends logic. It is a bond of the mind, of the soul. Carter opened his mouth, but the words didn't come. How could he understand this? He wasn't one of them. He didn't have the centuries of history that the Vrenari had. He didn't have the deep connection to their collective consciousness. How could he ever truly understand the weight of what they had built? But somehow, something in him felt the urgency of the moment. The weight of her words. The responsibility that had been thrust upon him. It wasn't just about being a witness to history, it was about being part of it. I understand that you're asking for trust, Carter finally said, his voice steady. Despite the storm of thoughts raging in his mind. You want humanity to trust you, to work with you. The Vrenari female nodded slowly. Trust is the foundation of all things, Lieutenant. But it is not the only thing we need. We need you. To understand what it would mean to stand by our side. What it would mean for the unity of the Vrenari to be maintained. If that balance is disturbed, the consequences will ripple through the galaxy. The chill in the air deepened, and for the first time, Carter felt a flicker of fear in the pit of his stomach. The Vrenari weren't just powerful, they were fragile. Their survival hinging on a delicate, intangible connection. If that connection was broken, what happens if the balance is lost? Carter asked, his voice now laced with urgency. He needed to know the stakes. This wasn't just about diplomacy. Anymore. It was about the survival of two species, and possibly the entire galaxy. The Vrenari female's expression darkened, and she glanced briefly at the Guardians before looking back at Carter. The loss of our unity would not just mean our destruction. It would destabilize the entire order of the universe. We are a part of something greater than ourselves. Without us, the fabric of the galaxy itself would be torn apart. Carter's mind reeled at her words. The implications of what she was saying were staggering. The Vrenari weren't just a powerful race. They were a cornerstone of some kind. Of cosmic order. The universe as it was depended on their balance. The collapse of the Vrenari could set off a chain reaction that would shatter everything. The Guardians, still standing in a silent circle around him, began to move again. Movements were slow, deliberate, as if they were waiting for something. Carter didn't know what, but it was clear that the test wasn't over. He could feel it in the air, a pressure building again, something that told him that if he didn't act in the right way, the consequences would be far worse than failure. The Vrenari female stepped back slightly, allowing the Guardians to advance. Their eyes still fixed on him, unblinking. They were waiting for him to make his next move. But Carter had no idea what the next move was. He was caught in the middle of something he couldn't fully comprehend. His mind flickered back to the images he had seen earlier, the Vrenari's long history, their collective consciousness, their interwoven destinies, and at the center of it all, the females. Their connection to the unity that kept the Vrenari alive, the responsibility that came with that dot. But what did it mean for humanity? Was it possible for two species to truly share such a connection? And if not, what would happen to them both? Carter's hands trembled, and for a moment he was paralyzed. The weight of the Vrenari's history, their truth, and the consequences of his choices were suffocating. This was bigger than anything he had faced before. Bigger than any mission, any battle, any negotiation. But then something shifted within him. A realization began to take shape in his mind. He wasn't just here to witness. He wasn't just here to understand. He was here to make a choice. He was here to shape the future, not just of humanity, but of the Vrenari as well. The Guardians stopped moving, their intense eyes still on him. The Vrenari female waited, her expression unreadable. And Carter, with a steady breath, made his decision. He wasn't going to back down. He wasn't going to let fear or uncertainty dictate the future. He took a step forward, his voice firm, carrying with it a new sense of determination. "We will stand by your side," he said. "Humanity will not only understand the importance of your unity, we will protect it. We will do everything we can to ensure that balance is not disturbed." The Vrenari female's expression remained unreadable for a long moment, and for a split second, Carter wondered if he had said the wrong thing, if he had misunderstood everything. But then slowly, The corners of her lips curled upward, and for the first time, Carter saw something akin to approval in her eyes. "You understand more than you realize, Lieutenant," she said quietly. "You have chosen wisely." The Guardians relaxed their posture, and the oppressive pressure in the air began to lift. Carter breathed a deep sigh of relief, but there was no time to dwell on his success. The Vrenari had accepted him for now. But the true trial was still ahead. This was just the beginning. The moment of tension broke, but the weight of what had just transpired still lingered heavily in the air. Carter stood, taking in deep breaths, his mind still trying to catch up with the gravity of the choice he had just made. The Vrenari female nodded slightly, her eyes watching him with an intensity that felt both approving and calculating. The Guardians, their faces as unreadable as ever, shifted slightly, no longer as imposing but still very much present. The Vrenari had tested him, and he had passed at least for now. But Carter knew the real challenge was only beginning. "You have made your choice, Lieutenant," the female said, her voice as calm and deliberate as ever. "But now comes the next part of the trial. Your decision has marked the beginning of an alliance, but alliances are not without their consequences." The words hung in the air, and for the first time since he had set foot on Zarthal, Carter felt the full weight of the situation. He had chosen to align with the Vrenari, to help them protect the balance of their unity, but he knew he wasn't entirely sure what that would entail. Was humanity truly ready to embrace the Vrenari's way of life? Was he even? "What do you mean by consequences?" Carter asked, his voice steady but filled with an undercurrent of concern. He could feel the tension creeping back into the air, the atmosphere thickening again. The Vrenari female's expression remained calm, though a flicker of something darker passed through her eyes. "You have pledged to protect our unity. But that means you are now entwined with us, Lieutenant. We are bound by your decision. If humanity fails to uphold its part of the agreement, if you betray our trust, if the balance is disturbed, it will not just be the Vrenari who suffer." Carter's stomach dropped at the implication. He knew the Vrenari weren't making empty threats, but this was something else entirely. He wasn't just protecting an alliance. He was safeguarding the very fabric of the Vrenari's existence, their unity, their consciousness. If humanity were to fail in its part of the agreement, the fallout would be catastrophic for both species. The entire galaxy could feel the ripple effects, and how are we supposed to ensure that doesn't happen? Carter asked, his voice more urgent now. The magnitude of the responsibility was sinking in, and he realized the stakes had grown far beyond anything he had anticipated. The Vrenari female stepped closer, her gaze unyielding. "You will teach humanity to understand us, to respect the bond that holds us together. But more than that, you will protect our females. They are the heart of our unity. Without them, our race would fall apart. It is not just a matter of diplomacy, it is a matter of survival." Carter nodded slowly, though he felt the weight of her words like a heavy burden on his shoulders. The Vrenari had never shared their true nature with anyone before. The bond they had between their males and females was not just physical, it was mental, spiritual, something that transcended the physical world. And now humanity was caught in the middle of it. But what did that mean for them? Was humanity ready for such a deep connection? Was he ready for it? Suddenly, a sharp sound pierced the air, a low, almost guttural hum that resonated from the very ground beneath their feet. The Vrenari female's expression shifted slightly, her eyes narrowing as she looked toward the source of the sound. The Guardians tensed, their movements becoming more purposeful. Something was happening. Carter's senses heightened, his hand instinctively reaching for his sidearm. He wasn't sure what was going on, but his training kicked in. Whatever was happening, he needed to be ready. "What is that?" Carter asked, his voice low as he scanned the horizon, trying to find the source of the disturbance. The Vrenari female's eyes never left the distance. "It is them, the ones who would destroy us." Carter's stomach tightened. Who? She turned to him, her eyes flashing with a mix of determination and anger. The Draxel. Carter's mind raced. The name sounded familiar. He had heard rumors of the Draxel, an aggressive, warlike species that had clashed with the Vrenari in the past. But the way she spoke of them now, it was clear that they were far more than just a passing threat. The Draxel weren't just enemies, they were predators, intent on breaking the Vrenari unity, on tearing apart the bond that held them together. A deep rumble vibrated through the ground again, this time accompanied by a flash of light in the vital sky. The air around them seemed to crackle with energy, and Carter could feel the tension building once more. The Vrenari were preparing for something. The Draxel have found us, the female said, her voice grim. They know that we are vulnerable, and they will stop at nothing to destroy the bond we share. They seek to shatter the unity that holds us together, to weaken us so they can conquer us. Carter's mind raced. The stakes had just gone from theoretical to deadly serious. The Draxel weren't just an external threat, they were a threat to the very existence of the Vrenari. If they succeeded in disrupting the Vrenari's unity, it would have catastrophic consequences for both species. You have to understand, Lieutenant, the female continued, her voice steady but filled with urgency. We need you to help us defend our bond. If the Draxel break our unity, if they harm our females, the galaxy will feel the consequences. Carter's pulse quickened. He could feel the weight of the situation pressing down on him. This wasn't just a fight for survival. This was a fight to protect the very balance of the universe itself. The ground beneath their feet shook again. This time more violently. A flash of light burst from the sky, and Carter's eyes widened as he saw it. A massive ship, dark and foreboding, descending rapidly toward them. The Draxel had arrived. The Vrenari female's expression hardened. The test is no longer a trial of understanding. It is a test of survival. Carter turned to face the incoming threat, his mind clear now. He had chosen his path. He had made his pledge to protect the Vrenari unity. And now it was time to prove that humanity could be more than just a passive observer. They could be a protector. But the Draxel were here. And the real battle won for the survival of both their species was about to begin. The air crackled with an electric tension as the massive Draxel warship descended from the clouds, casting a dark shadow over the terrain. The rumble of its engines reverberated through the ground beneath Carter's feet, each thundering pulse shaking him to his core. The Vrenari female stood resolute beside him, her expression now set in steely determination, though there was an unmistakable edge of urgency in her eyes. The Guardians, who had been silent until now, formed a tight circle. Around them, their bodies shifting in perfect synchronization. It was clear that the Vrenari weren't just preparing to defend themselves. They were preparing to engage in a battle that would determine the very survival of their species. The Draxel ship loomed overhead, its sheer size and menacing form making Carter's stomach twist with unease. The Draxel weren't just a threat to the Vrenari. They were a threat to the galaxy itself. The unity the Vrenari held, the delicate balance between their males and females, was something that the Draxel had always sought to destroy. They understood the power of the Vrenari's shared consciousness and wanted to tear it apart. If they succeeded, the ripple effect would tear through the fabric of the galaxy, destabilizing countless systems and species. Carter's heart raced, but his mind remained focused. He had pledged to protect the Vrenari, and that promise was no longer a matter of diplomacy or theory. It was a matter of survival. He wasn't just a spectator in this conflict. He was now part of it. A vital piece in the defense of something far greater than any single species. The unity of the Vrenari was his responsibility too. Lieutenant, the Vrenari female said, her voice low but firm. We cannot face the Draxel alone. We need your help, and we need it now. Carter nodded, his pulse steadying as his training took over. The Vrenari had given him the opportunity to prove that humanity could be more than just observers. Now he had to show them that humanity was capable of protecting what they had sworn to defend. Without another word, he unslung his weapon, a standard-issue plasma rifle, and moved to join the Guardians. The Vrenari had their own weapons, alien and elegant, their glowing energy blades and force shields looking more like extensions of their beings than simple tools of war. Carter's rifle felt crude in comparison, but it would have to do. He couldn't let the Vrenari stand alone. As the Draxel ship hovered above, several smaller craft detached from its belly, darting toward the ground with alarming speed. The Vrenari female's eyes glinted, her body tensing as she prepared for what was to come. "They come for our females," she said, her voice a whisper of cold fury. "They know that if they destroy our heart, they destroy us." The small Draxel crafts began to land, their engines screaming as they touched down with destructive force. The ground shook violently as several dozen Draxel soldiers disembarked, their armored forms casting long, menacing shadows. Their dark, insect-like faces were partially obscured by helmets, but their body language was unmistakable. They were here to fight, to break the Vrenari's unity at any cost. "Form up!" Carter shouted, his voice cutting through the tension. The Guardians responded instantly, their movements fluid and precise, like a living, breathing machine. Carter took his place at the front, his rifle raised, ready for whatever was to come. The Vrenari female stepped forward beside him, her gaze fixed on the advancing Draxel. "Remember, Lieutenant," she said, her voice calm but edged with urgency. "This battle is not only about defeating the Draxel. It is about preserving the unity that binds us. If they succeed in weakening us, the consequences will be catastrophic." Carter nodded, understanding now more than ever the full weight of what was at stake. This wasn't just about a single fight. It was about protecting an entire species, its way of life, and the fragile web of consciousness that connected them. All. The first wave of Draxel soldiers charged, their movements swift and brutal. Carter fired, his shots hitting the Draxel with deadly accuracy, but the creatures were relentless. The Guardians clashed with the Draxel with incredible speed, their glowing blades cutting through the air like light itself. The battle was fierce, the air filled with the sounds of plasma fire and the clash of energy shields. Carter's heart pounded in his chest as he fought. Every instinct told him to focus, to stay sharp, to protect the Vrenari female and ensure their survival. But he couldn't ignore the larger picture. The Draxel weren't just attacking the Vrenari. They were attacking everything that held the galaxy together, the delicate balance of unity that could keep the universe from spiraling into chaos. A Draxel soldier lunged at him, and Carter barely had time to react. His rifle shot wide, but the Guardian beside him was quick, intercepting the Draxel with a swift, powerful strike. The soldier crumpled to the ground, its body twitching before falling still. "Stay focused." The Guardian snapped, its voice deep and unwavering. Carter nodded and refocused, locking his sights on the next wave of soldiers. The battle raged on, each moment a fight for survival. In the midst of the chaos, Carter glanced to his side, where the Vrenari female stood, watching the battle with an almost unsettling calm. Her expression was determined, her eyes scanning the battlefield as though she could see something beyond the immediate conflict. Carter knew she wasn't just standing there. She was thinking, strategizing, calculating every move. She was part of the plan, even if she wasn't in the thick of the fighting. The Draxel were relentless, their numbers seeming endless. For every soldier that fell, two more seemed to take its place. The Vrenari were holding their ground, but they were being pushed back. Carter's mind raced as he tried to make sense of the situation. If they couldn't hold the Draxel at bay, they would lose everything. The unity, the balance, the Vrenari's very way of life, it would all be destroyed. And then, as though answering his unspoken thoughts, the Vrenari female stepped forward. "Now," she said, her voice a commanding whisper. With a single movement, she raised her hand, and suddenly the entire battlefield seemed to freeze. The air shimmered, and Carter felt the sharpest twinge of vertigo, as if the very fabric of reality had bent. The Guardians stopped mid-strike. The Draxel soldiers froze in place, their eyes wide with confusion. Carter stood still, his breath shallow. As he tried to process what was happening, the Vrenari female's eyes locked onto his, and in that instant, everything clicked into place. The unity of the Vrenari, their collective consciousness, wasn't just about strength. It was about connection. She wasn't just commanding the Guardians, she was linking them all together. The battlefield, the entire fight, had become part of their shared consciousness. And now Carter was part of it too. "Fight as one," she whispered, her voice like a wave washing over him. The unity of the Vrenari is not just physical, it is mental. And now it is yours as well. Carter's mind opened, and for the first time, he felt the true power of the Vrenari bond, their collective consciousness flowing through him. His instincts sharpened, his senses heightened. He could feel every Guardian's movements, every pulse of energy, every Draxel soldier's position. It was as though he could predict what would happen before it even occurred. The battle shifted in an instant. Carter, now fully integrated into the Vrenari's unity, fought with a precision and speed that was almost supernatural. He and the Guardians moved as one, striking with lethal accuracy, tearing through the Draxel forces like a wave crashing against a cliff dot. It wasn't long before the Draxel, overwhelmed and disoriented, began to retreat. Their soldiers scattered, some falling to the ground, others turning and fleeing into the skies. Carter felt the collective relief of the Vrenari as the battle wound down. The Draxel had been repelled for now. The Vrenari female stood at the center of the battlefield, her eyes now soft with a sense of accomplishment and peace. Carter, though exhausted, could feel the satisfaction in her gaze. The unity had been preserved, and the galaxy was safe for the moment. "You have proven your worth, Lieutenant," she said, her voice steady but filled with a quiet respect. "Humanity has shown that it can stand with us, and for that, we are grateful." Carter nodded, his body aching, his mind still processing the overwhelming events of the past few hours. But as he looked out over the battlefield, the smoke beginning to clear, he realized something. This wasn't just a victory for the Vrenari, it was a victory for both species. They had survived, together. And now, the true alliance between humanity and the Vrenari had begun, and it would shape the future of the galaxy forever.